Brahmabhuta PrasannAtma na shochati na kankshati samassarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. A shloka where Krishna now makes the transition to a very important segment of the Gita. A transition is being made here just like how we made the transition from the first Shadga of the Gita to the second Shadga of the Gita. Through 6 chapters of the Gita, Bhagavan teaches us the means to self-realization, Atma Sakshatkara. He teaches Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. And he also explains that blissful state of Naishkarmya Siddhi, the state of a Sthita Prajna, the state of a Yoga Rudha, the state of a Gunatita. One who also can be called as Brahmabhuta PrasannAtma. A state where one is blissfully self-aware. Through the practice of karma jnana, one attains Atma Sakshatkara. And this becomes a prerequisite for Paramatma Sakshatkara. If we see how Gita is structured, this is the way Krishna takes Arjuna and all of us through in the journey of the Gita. So 18th chapter being the summary of all summaries, having summarized the core principles of karma, jnana and vairagya. Now Krishna, he is going to take us onto the pathway of bhakti. Swadharma jnana vairagya sadhya bhakti eka gocharaha. Atma Sakshatkara, the state of realizing one's own true nature, becomes a prerequisite. And we have seen the 53 shlokas of 18th chapter, Krishna teaches us how to perform swadharma, rooted in the jnana, the knowledge of reality. Knowledge-oriented action culminates in God love. This is the transition that we are making. Knowledge-oriented action culminates, consummates into bhakti. Bhakti, even though is the natural state of the Atman, for a Baddha Jiva, bhakti seems to be not natural. That is why we are told that we should practice bhakti, we should cultivate bhakti. What is natural to us seems to be unnatural. Bhakti is our natural state. But when the Jivatma is associated with Prakriti, bhakti seems to be completely unnatural. There is bhakti, but bhakti for the world, not bhakti for Bhagavan. What is natural becomes unnatural because of the unnatural association. Just like how chalk and cheese, the association between chalk and cheese is unnatural, the association between the never-changing Atman and the ever-changing Prakriti, the association is also unnatural. But this unnatural association becomes an eternal association, becomes anadi. And in that state of association, bhakti becomes something which is alien. And in order for us to realize our natural attraction for Bhagavan, we need to do sadhana. This sadhana is nothing but purification. When we talk about purification, it is essentially twofold in nature. The purification that Shastras teaches is nothing but decreasing our attraction for the world and decreasing our attraction for the material, increasing our attraction for the spiritual. Purification is all about just this. One side, decrease our attraction for the material, which becomes very natural to us because of our misidentification. With this decreasing attraction for the material, purification also helps us to increase our attraction for the spiritual. So Krishna now, having led us on the path of Atma Sakshatkara through the practice of Karma Yoga, now says that this naturally takes us to the next step. This happens very natural, and we will see how this becomes natural. Brahmabhuta PrasannAtma na shochati na kankshati. Brahmabhuta, the one who has realized one's true nature, the one who has attained Atma Sakshatkara, one who is in the state of Naishkarmya Siddhi. PrasannAtma. Prasanna Atma. Here, Atma has several meanings. PrasannAtma. Atma can also mean mind. PrasannAtma. One who is endowed with a serene mind, a tranquil mind. Brahmabhuta PrasannAtma. Because one becomes Brahmabhuta, one also becomes PrasannAtma. When one becomes PrasannAtma, na shochati na kankshati. Na shochati na kankshati. Na kankshati. One stops longing for material pleasures. Kankshati na shochati. One stops grieving. Krishna, right in the second chapter, says, Ashocyan anvashochastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasun agatasumscha nanushocanti panditaha. Hey Arjuna, gatasum agatasumscha nanushocanti panditaha. Once you realize that whatever you see around you, gatasun agatasumscha will come and go. The moment one realizes everything around is temporary, one will stop grieving or craving. Because the grieving and craving is only when we mistake something to be permanent. When we mistake the temporary to be permanent, we crave. And when we don't get it or when we lose it, we grieve. The moment we understand the impermanence of Prakriti, the world around, impermanent nature, which is always subject to the law of change, then there is no need to grieve or crave. Brahmabhuta PrasannAtma na shochati na kankshati. One who is situated in self-awareness with a serene mind neither grieves nor craves. Such a person who is aware of one's true nature, self-realized, samassarveshu bhuteshu, he is equally disposed, equipoised towards the world, because he knows the nature of the world and he knows that in every entity the nature of the Atman is the same. So therefore, to him, he is equally disposed. And in that state, he says, Hey Arjuna, mad bhaktim labhate param. In that state, you will gain bhakti, devotion to me, Hey Arjuna. Which means, by becoming self-aware, one also cultivates self-remembrance. In knowing who I am, I also get to know whose I am. Because the more I get to know my nature, I also get to know to be in love with Krishna is my natural state. So thus now, with 54th Shloka, Krishna is making that transition. Brahmabhuta PrasannAtma. Brahmabhutaha. The one who has attained that exalted state of realizing oneself, which means Naishkarmya Siddhi, even if one performs work in that state, that work is considered as worklessness, a state of worklessness. This is what we say, karma becomes jnanakara. Karma becomes jnanakara. Krishna beautifully explains this. Gata sangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasaha yajñāyās charatah karma samagram praviliyate. We can visualize this by looking at an action. If we think every action is a circle, embedded in the circle, draw a larger circle. This is your karma. Any action that you do. And within that circle, draw another circle inside. That is jnana. Every action has to have some knowledge. It is knowledge that manifests as action, isn't it? Any kind of knowledge. Every action that we do is nothing but manifestation of knowledge. Material knowledge manifests as material action. Vishaya jnana manifests as kamya karma. So therefore, any action, if we were to visualize an action, karma as a circle, then draw another circle, jnana, inside that. Now, how can this karma become jnanakara? When the small circle called jnana has to start growing and it has to become overlap with the bigger circle, which is karma. When the inner circle jnana and the outer circle karma become overlap each other fully, then the karma that we do is jnanakara. Karma is knowledge-like. And when that knowledge is knowledge of reality, when that knowledge is tattva jnana, then the action that we do becomes actionless, reactionless. That is the state of Naishkarmya Siddhi. Brahma Bhutaha is one who continues to do actions, but his actions are reactionless because karma has become jnanakara. Now, when karma becomes jnanakara, every action that we do can slowly and steadily lead us towards loving Krishna. How does that happen? When yajñāyās charatah karma samagram praviliyate. When the action has to be done as yajña. Now, what kind of yajña this is? Yajña which is upasana yajña. Krishna explains this in the 4th chapter. And what is this upasana yajña? Brahmarpanam, Brahmagnau, Brahmagni, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena gantavyam, Brahmakarma samadhinaha. Knowing that everything is pervaded and permeated by Krishna and the actor is an instrument of Krishna, the action is done with absorption in Krishna, the object of the action is also permeated by Krishna, everything is Krishna. In that state, every action that is done becomes reactionless. That is the upasana yajna that Krishna talks about. So Brahma Bhuta, the one who does karma as jnanakara, which means every action henceforth becomes reactionless, and that is a state which leads to PrasannAtma. The mind becomes serene. When can the mind become serene? A PrasannAtma is one. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra says, a PrasannAtma is the one who is untainted by karma, by klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya. Klesha, karma, vipaka ashaihi aparamrishtaha. Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. What is klesha? Klesha are impurities of the mind, afflictions of the mind. We'll come to klesha. What are the other three? Kama, vipaka, ashaya. A PrasannAtma is untainted by all the three. Karma, punya papa karmas. Anadikala punya papa karmas. It is because of anadikala punya papa karma we end up taking birth. So vipaka represents birth and all the experiences we go through in this birth. ashaya, the repository of vasanas that we accumulate. So, the major obstacles for us are the impressions, the vasanas that we accumulate while we go through experiences in this very birth, plus the sum load of vasanas that we have already brought into this Janma. So, unless these obstacles are removed, bhakti will not germinate and grow. The reason why bhakti is unnatural for us is because we have several obstacles as impurities which cover our own true nature. Karma, vipaka, ashayehi. That is the reason why we always struggle. Even when we realize that we need to cultivate and practice bhakti, in the process of transforming ourselves, we always struggle. And we can look at this process of transformation in 4 stages. The first stage is a stage of failures without struggle. The second is a stage of failures with struggle. The third is a stage of success with struggle. The fourth is a stage of success without struggle. The first is a stage of failures without struggle. There is always a struggle going on. Even whenever we want to do something good, there is always a struggle that is going on. And first stage, mostly we are in that stage. Failure without struggle, our vasanas completely take over and it becomes impossible for us to do any devotional work. Because it seems so very unnatural. Because when we are identifying with our vasanas, to be attracted to the world is so very natural. So we start asking questions as, what is the big deal if I just go through this pleasurable experience? Why should I even sacrifice that? That's a question mark we ask. It's a big ask for us to do something which to overcome the power of asana. So therefore the first stage is failures without struggle. We don't even struggle because we just completely are overpowered. The next stage is failures with struggle. A little bit of Gita goes in and then we say, we have to now consciously, we have to make choices. Let me now see how my vasanas can be overpowered. So there is a little bit of struggle, but we end up failing because our buddhi, our intelligence is still soaked in worldliness. Very, very difficult to overpower vasanas. So the second stage is still failure, but with struggle. Then we slowly move on to the third stage, which is a stage where success with struggle. So we start succeeding. Regular satsang helps us to sometimes win over our vasanas. I have to still say sometimes. Sometimes we win. We experience that bliss of love for Krishna. But then we keep getting distracted, pulled apart. And all of us have this question, right? Throughout the week, we are in a mode of distraction. It becomes very difficult for us. We keep succeeding now and then. That's a stage of success with struggle. Eventually, we reach a stage of success without struggle. Now, this to be untainted of karma, vipaka, ashayehi. Only when we are untainted by all these three, we can reach that stage of success without any struggle. For that, we need to address the kleshas, the afflictions of the mind. A PrasannAtma is one. When we say a serene mind, one who has completely been purified of all kinds of kleshas. Avidya, asmita, ragadvesha, abhiniveshaha, panchakleshaha. Kleshas are panchakleshas, fivefold. Avidya, asmita, ragadvesha, abhinivesha. Avidya is ignorance, because of which the Atman identifies with the body. We are 99.99% of the time, we are in that mode. Every action that we do, we are completely body conscious, completely unaware that we are not the body. Avidya. This is the most dangerous klesha. Asmita. Identification with our mind. The Atman identifying with the mind. We tend to believe what the mind says as gospel truth. The garbage in the mind makes us believe that whatever the mind says, we identify with our thoughts, we identify with our emotions, we identify with the feelings. So therefore, this klesha of asmita, that strong identification with the mind, we may even overcome this misconception of I am the body, but to overcome the misconception that I am the mind is very difficult. This is the second klesha, asmita. Raga dvesha, strong likes and dislikes. Raga dvesha. This essentially, raga and dvesha are essentially two sides of the same coin. This is because of avidya and asmita. As long as we are in a state of misidentification, we cannot avoid it. And then the next klesha, abhinivesha. Abhinivesha panchakve. This is that affliction of the mind which is nothing but fear of separation. What is this fear of separation? Fear of separation from this body. Underlying everything that we do, there is one fear that is constantly lingering. It can keep manifesting itself. Now and then it can become louder, it can go silent, but that fear is always lingering. Fear of separation from the body. Because why? I am so strongly identified with this body, and because of this identification with the body, with everything which is related to this body, there is that sense of fear which rules me. This is the fear that rules everything that I do. That fear of separation from this body is so very strong. That is the root cause of all afflictions in the mind. Until and unless all these 5 kleshas, 5 afflictions of the mind are completely cleansed, it becomes impossible to have a mind which is serene. So that is why Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta PrasannAtma. Brahma Bhutaha, one who has reached that state where the work that is done, Gata Sangasya Muktasya. Gata Sangasya. Every action that is done is rooted in threefold Tyaga. No, we always have to keep going back and refreshing what we have been learning throughout the Gita. Very important. That's when every time when we apply the principles, it becomes easy for us. Every time we do an action, we have to ask 3 questions. Am I the real doer of this action? Is the action my own? Is the cause of this action? Am I the sole cause? And can I control the results of the action? Can I control the consequences of the action? Every time when we ask these 3 questions, the answers become very clear. Gata Sangasya, Trivida Tyaga, and Muktasya. Muktasya is freedom from compulsion to enjoy Vishayas. Today, the way we have structured our lives and living is we have become compulsive enjoyers. Even if it is not necessary, we compulsively enjoy the world. So, Muktaha, true freedom is freedom from this compulsive enjoyment. Krishna never says don't enjoy. We are in this world, we are in the world, but we are not for the world. So, there is no compulsion to always enjoy the world. So, Muktaha, freedom from compulsive enjoyment. Little bit of enjoyment is fine, but compulsive enjoyment is what Krishna is always cautioning. Jnana avastita chetasaha. To be always rooted in the jnana, knowledge of reality. When one does every action based on this, Brahma Bhutaha PrasannAtma. He becomes a PrasannAtma, one who is serene. When the mind is serene, then knowledge-oriented action culminates in dash dash, God's love. It becomes natural, because when the mind is devoid of the kleshas, the natural attraction for Krishna starts to blossom. Then it is not practicing bhakti, it is letting bhakti to blossom, our natural bhakti to blossom. It's like a flame needs to be protected initially. When we take this analogy of a flame, initially when the flame is feeble, we need to really protect it. The flame of bhakti is very, 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 very feeble. In the initial stages, we don't even realize there is a flame because it's covered. There is a screen which is covered. Now, slowly and steadily, this dark screen starts to become transparent, translucent, and we start to see, after all, there is flame. And slowly and steadily, we need to start protecting the flame, because the wind around will easily put the flame off. So we need definitely to protect the flame. We need to practice various sadhanas so that we stay on course. Now this feeble flame will start slowly growing. Eventually that flame will become a conflagration. Massive fire which cannot be put out. Any kind of wind and storm cannot put out that flame. When we reach that stage of the ultimate stage, the supreme bhakta, then no adversities will have an impact on the way we lead our lives and living. So therefore, when the mind becomes serene, PrasannAtma, we start to see that flame. That's what na shochati na kankshati. Na shochati na kankshati. Why na shochati na kankshati? One does not neither grieves nor laments for what is impermanent, because one starts relating with what is permanent. The moment we start to taste that which is permanent, our taste for the impermanent starts to wane. Once we starts to taste something which is supremely tasty, obviously our taste for something which is tasteless will slowly wane. This is exactly what happens when we start to taste Krishna's love in little doses. Slowly and steadily, our taste for worldly pleasures also starts to wane. It's a very gradual process. For some, this can be very rapid. It's just a trigger and then transformation happens overnight. For some, it can be a lifelong process. From raw to ripe, a fruit has to go through a process. It's a process, but it is a sure short process. Brahma Bhuta PrasannAtma na shochati na kankshati. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. Equipoised to everything around, all the living, all the entities in the world. Now, when we really see, when we reflect on our longings, we all know our longings are infinite. These infinite longings are manifestation of only one longing. If we go deeper and deeper and deeper, examining each and every longing that we have, these longings may seem infinite in nature, which is true, because the longing for the world and the worldly objects, the longing is infinite. Why infinite longings? Because everything is impermanent. So therefore, the moment a desire gets fulfilled, it only gets multiplied, it only gets strengthened. So the longings only grow in number. So our longings become infinite in nature. These infinite longings, when we really go deeper, are manifestation of one longing, which is longing for the infinite. Let me repeat that statement. all our longings which are infinite. Our infinite longings are manifestation of only one longing, which is longing for the infinite. Because we all always long for that which is infinite, isn't it? What are we longing for ultimately? For everlasting happiness, infinite happiness, everlasting love. This is what we are actually longing for. In order to fulfill that longing, we are going after everything which is around, and everything being impermanent, this one longing becomes infinite longings. But when we start looking at the root of that longing, it is only one. And when we start to realize that that one longing can be fulfilled just by changing the direction, then not only nashochati na kankshati, samasarveshu bhuteshu. Now we are no longer dependent on the world and the worldly objects and the worldly people for the fulfillment of our longings, because we know the source of our infinite longings is only one, that is our longing for Krishna. And in that discovery of our natural love for Him, that is why Krishna says, when this happens, He says, the natural course is mad bhaktim labhate param. You will gain that bhakti for me. This gaining of bhakti is not gaining of something we have lost. This is regaining what we already have. This is the most important thing that we need to realize. Bhakti is not something we go and seek something from outside and say, now I get it. Bhakti is essentially regaining what we thought is lost. Mad bhaktim labhate bharam. So therefore, what happens is, in this process, from believing in Him, we move to a stage of blissfully belonging to Him. Until then, we are only looking for security. So, it's easier to believe in Krishna. Why? Because that belief in Krishna gives us some security. And when we believe Him, He essentially is the one who does all the work for us. When we believe in Krishna, because He is somebody who is our facilitator, who does everything that we want. We can ask Him whatever we want, and we get things done through Him. But when we start to move from believing Him to belonging to Him, then it is not about what He can do for us, it is about what we can do for Him. From a state of security, we move to a sense of purpose in life. Because then we realize that there is a purpose. There is a purpose, a reason why I have been given this body as an instrument. There is a purpose for which the Atman has taken birth as a human being, endowed with an able body, endowed with an able mind, endowed with an intellect, unique endowments which are not available for other living beings. So one realizes that these endowments are to be put to use for only one purpose: to realize our true nature. And when we realize our true nature, then the answer to the question as to why we should love Him and serve Him becomes crystal clear. So therefore Krishna says a natural progression that Atma Sakshatkara will lead to blossoming of bhakti. And when bhakti starts to blossom, Paramatma Sakshatkara is the goal. So Shloka 54, Brahma Bhuta PrasannAtma Nashochati na kankshati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu. By being situated in a state of self-awareness, in a state of Naishkarmya Siddhi, in the state of Sthita Prajna, in the state of Gunatita, when continues to work by completely devoid of the threefold attachments, when one completely rises above all the three gunas and one starts to purify one's mind in that process, this purification is going to weaken one's attraction for the world and strengthen one's natural attraction for Krishna. And when one's natural attraction for Krishna strengthens, then from the state of Atma Sakshatkara, one starts to cultivate bhakti. So then the Atma Jnana with the cultivation of bhakti will blossom into Bhagavad Jnana, and Bhagavad Jnana will manifest as Kainkarya, which will essentially lead to Paramatma Sakshatkara. So from Shloka number 55 onwards, Krishna summarizes from chapter 7 to 12, eventually leading to the ultimate essence of all the Shastras. Ishvare kartrita buddhihi sattvopadeyatantime swakarma parinamascha. So the summary shloka from the Gitartha Sangraha, swakarma parinamascha. Swakarma, the dharma that we do, how can it transform into kainkarya? It can transform into kainkarya when we realize our true nature and our true state, where bhakti is natural to us, and when bhakti blossoms and grows, swakarma becomes kainkarya. Swakarma parinamascha shastra sarartha uchyate. And the last segment is the shastra sarartha, the very essence of all the shastras, not just the Gita Shastra, all the Shastras, because Gita Shastra is the essence of all the Shastras. So therefore, from Shloka number 55 onwards, we are leading to the essence of all the Shastras. So therefore, please go ahead and tell everyone that if you want to know the essence of all the Shastras in a span of 2 months, please start attending satsang regularly from next week onwards. Golden opportunity to learn everything from the Shastras in very few number of shlokas. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.